All right, welcome everyone to the Mid-Atlantic Ocean Ecosystems panel. You know, if you know me, you know my bias. I tend to think that everything that we care about and have been talking about in this meeting, the weather, the climate, fisheries, tourism, recreation, are all wholly owned subsidiaries of the ocean ecosystem. So, and accordingly, one of the things that we're really have the great fortune in this region to have is NOAA Fisheries, Northeast Fisheries Science Center, which has been for several years producing increasingly high quality state of the ecosystem reports for the Northeast region and the Mid-Atlantic. And unfortunately, the person who was going to present that, Sarah Gachis, is no longer with NOAA. I just wanted to touch, and I encourage you all to Google that, Mid-Atlantic State of the Ecosystem Report. It's a really concise, easy to digest, considering how much incredible, detailed and diverse information is synthesized into it, into some key indicators. And those indicators include, you know, socioeconomic and cultural metrics, which in this year's report do show a continued decline in several measures around commercial and around commercial fishing in particular, increase in recreational fishing effort, a shift away from charter party fishing to shore-based fishing, and so on. And that's important information to understand in the report. It also includes a lot of information around the ecosystem, oceanographic drivers. One of the key indicators is tracking what we call the Mid-Atlantic cold pool. It's a really unique feature of the Mid-Atlantic ecosystem that seasonally forms and provides incredibly important habitat for diverse marine wildlife and harvest species. And there's a very clear and concerning trend of the cold pool getting smaller and warmer. So essentially we're less habitat of lower quality. But just as a reminder that, to me, that climate and weather are different things. Last year was actually a pretty great year for the cold pool. There was apparently a slug of cold water from the Scotian Shelf and the Labrador Current that came down and kept things cool. But our critters, our marine life, our wildlife, whichever taxa you want to look at, it's pretty clear for the last decade or so, and increasingly clear that there's a trend of species ranges shifting. Someone said fish are ectotherms. So if they want to change their temperature, they have to move. They can't put on a sweater or turn on the air conditioning. And so we're seeing generally a trend of shifts towards the northeast and towards deeper water. That's continuing. There are continuing concerns, increasing concerns about ecosystem instability. What does that mean? You need to really dig into the report, but it looks at it's tracking metrics including plankton diversity and abundance and finding statistically significant changes in the distribution and abundance of zooplankton and phytoplankton species, accompanied by different changes in fish community traits. Protected species are also responding to changing conditions, and the report outlines what one of our panelists who will be joining us virtually, Tim Cole from NOAA, will share his work leading NOAA's North Atlantic right whale surveys. So with that context, my challenge today is to briefly cover the gist of these talks a little introduction. And they are very diverse topics that might, to the untrained eye, appear totally unconnected. But of course, you guys are pretty trained up. So I will say, that they exemplify critical work, along some themes that touch down in a lot of other places, other talks that could be on stage in forums like this in this region. For example, two of the talks deal with global pervasive threats that we're just beginning to understand and figure out how to develop solutions for, to adapt for: ocean acidification and microplastic pollution. part of my sense of our sense of place here in the Mid-Atlantic is that we're a migratory crossroads. It's a fabulous place to be in marine ecology. You just sit and wait and everything in the world comes by at some point or another. The ecosystem report I was referencing finds that overall diversity has been sustained, but it's a different cast of critters, right? We have the shifting species, but there's replacement species from the south, overgeneralizing a basic truth of how the system is working. But the migratory species, we basically have major guilds or tribes, if you will, of north-south migrants and east-west migrants. And together, they're like the warp and weft of the biodiversity tapestry of the Mid-Atlantic, if you will. And two of the talks focus on one of the north-south migrants, the North Atlantic right whale and the sturgeon. So it takes all these pieces to make an ecosystem that ticks. And you know, we're all sort of at various points on the spectrum of like collecting observations, developing models, understanding how the world works, and then thinking about what that means for us as stewards, as guardians of nature and of the economies that it produces. So I think that the work that Alan will present is a really nice example of how science can be synthesized to understand and recognize and celebrate an iconic place, which, although it has the word sanctuary in its name, as I understand it, is really going to be a fabulous platform for, you know, really sustained and ramped up ocean literacy, outreach and education to kids and others. So I think I went on a bit more than I intended to, and I apologize, but I'm going to, without further ado, I'm going to briefly introduce each of the panelists, and if they would like to share a little bit more biographical detail, they can. So going from the end of the table towards me, we've got Jana, and, sorry, a little spaced out here, because it says Emily Davenport here, and it tricked me up for a second. Jana from MARACOOS will be presenting on a sturgeon model that has been developed, and I'm just going to leave it at that. Stephen Jessie over here, not going in order anymore, from Surfrider and the Margate Conservation Group, Sustainable Margate, is going to present on something I had never heard about. I learned so much from just the title about microplastics and a vector for microplastics into the ocean I had never even thought about before. Then we'll have Tim, who will introduce in a moment when. Oh, Tim, hey there, great. Tim's here with us, fabulous, and from NOAA, and we've got Jessie Turner here on my right she's the ED for the International Alliance to Combat Ocean Acidification. So let's go ahead and get started, and without further ado, we'll start with the first talk, which will be Jessie.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jay. You're a beautiful speaker, so you're allowed to go on as you would like. North and South migrants, East and West migrants, weaving the fabric of biodiversity in the Mid-Atlantic. That's beautiful. Anyway, well, hello, everybody. My name is Jessie Turner with something called the Ocean Acidification Alliance. I know some of you, and it's really nice to meet many of you. My talk is probably the most weird, I suppose, in this panel. It's really focused on communications and probably the least applied, but hopefully still relevant to how we think about talking about ocean ecosystems in the Mid-Atlantic. Great, so I'll just, before I kind of launch into yes, thank you, ma'am. Before I launch into our little slides, which is going to be about this project that we undertook, the Ocean Acidification Alliance, and just for context, for those of you that don't know, we are a voluntary initiative of state governments, as well as national governments, ports, tribes, First Nations, around the world with several affiliate members working to increase ambition for climate action, talk about ocean acidification in that context, and also think about the science for management decisions at a domestic level that are going to be needed increasingly on the coastal zone margin to think about how we respond to ocean and coastal acidification in the context of climate change and in the years to come. And the good news is we've got a lot of great experience and sort of success stories in thinking about science to management in the United States, and that's a really important model for the rest of the world. But before I share a little bit about this storytelling project, if you will, is OA Story Maps, exploring our changing ocean impacts and response to acidification in the U.S., I want to just give a little bit of context and how we think about ocean acidification and how I want this group to think about the presentation and how this resource might work for you. So ocean acidification is a pretty dynamic topic. It's a little bit of a chameleon in some contexts, and that you can really pull out different messages and think about calling different actors to different types of action using the topic of acidification. So in some instances, you might think about just relaying urgency for climate action and reducing CO2 emissions. This project is really focused on that type of message, but as you'll see, there's many others. Those include things like safeguarding seafood sectors, economies, and coastal livelihoods, protecting and restoring biodiversity and marine habitats, thinking about the use of blue carbon sequestration and submerged aquatic vegetation for coastal resilience, thinking about reducing coastal pressures and land-based pollution that make coastal acidification much worse, and finally, assessing the potential risks, benefits, monitoring and evaluation needs that are going to be needed for increasingly talked about and piloted marine carbon dioxide removal strategies. And so my guess is that not many of you think of yourself as ocean acidification specialists or practitioners, but all of you probably do something on that list or do something adjacent to that list. And so looking at this presentation and this resource of this story map, you know, one way that we talk about acidification is that it can be context in a lot of ways, and it can also be information that you're going to need that's going to help you do something specific for management. And so this is a resource that we put together to really help you all tell stories about acidification, to help you reach different partners, and think about acidification as working for you in some ways, and also thinking about how we manage acidification when we talk about the messages and the activities we're working on to increase ecosystem health in the Mid-Atlantic. So, oh, no, we don't do that, we do this. This project was created in 2024, and it's a collaboration between the Aquarium Conservation Partnership. Some of you might know what that is. It's a collection of aquaria in the United States, working particularly on their messaging and sort of narratives and advocacy together. The OA Alliance, which I described, and then NOAA's Ocean Acidification Program, which you may know includes 6 different coastal acidification networks working around the country. The project is that we wanted to bring something together that would help advance communications about climate and ocean changes occurring in the United States. We wanted to present something that was a little bit more place-based, a little bit more localized information about unique impacts, responses, and calls to action taking shape. And ultimately think about this as an education outreach kind of support, if you will, for aquarium partners and other science institutions that are reaching the general public. That's not usually a constituency that we try to serve. It's usually our state members or our government members, and this was something to try to think about a broader general public outreach. So what are we hoping to accomplish? Again, increase understanding about the impacts of carbon emissions on our ocean, reach some of these new audiences that we're not used to working with, and accelerate these calls to action. And so our primary audience in this context is U.S. visitors to aquaria or marine learning centers. We get a lot of interest from educators, community nonprofit groups, conservation organizations, even international leadership partners across international fora at UN spaces. And then our federal government partners, our tribal government partners, city government, elected officials, we want this to be a tool for your networks and your partners to feel like they can take and share and utilize in their content. So we, as I mentioned, the project is exploring our changing ocean. They are story maps, and they are based upon these coastal acidification networks by region. So for our friends from the Great Lakes that are here, I am sorry we don't have one that perfectly maps, but we do have Alaska's changing ocean, the changing Pacific, the changing Gulf, and then the Northeast Atlantic, Mid and South Atlantic as sort of these divisions of regions that we have started to pilot. So just to give you a little bit of a taste, if you will, and I'll make sure that we don't go over, of what the changes in the Mid-Atlantic story map looks like. For each story map, we chose a primary species or a iconic species, if you will, that would sort of represent and be the narrator for this story map. In this case, obviously, we have a blue crab. The charismatic blue crab says things like, I live here, I am part of this ecosystem, you have seen me X, Y, and Z, and I'm important because. Also, my home is under threat because of climate change. And then we take the reader through these different sections. So you can see here, what is climate change? What is ocean acidification? This isn't the full example, it's just a snapshot. Where we introduce the pH scale, we talk in this case about pteropods, and try to show a little bit of food system impacts and where that iconic species fits in that world order. We try to talk a little bit about ocean acidification in the context of these other stressors. Yes, we need to think about warming, oxygen loss, nutrient loading, heat waves, and sort of represent that full picture of change. And then we go into local trends. I'm not going to read these all for you. You probably can't see them that well, but try to give the Mid-Atlantic region a little bit of flavor of what's going on here. How do the different currents, how does freshwater input affect the change in pH at a coastal zone level? How do we think about seasonal events like big hurricanes or phytoplankton blooms or photosynthesis, nutrient runoff, talk a lot about fertilizers affecting pH at a coastal level. And then trying to describe that these small changes can have big impacts. We also talk about moving beyond shellfish and that we also focus on finfish. It's not just shellfish under threat. This is important then to connect those species to the impacts on humans, right? So talking about what's at stake, real focused on seafood economies and livelihoods, of course, have a little bit of a flavor from the region, a couple familiar faces. And then moving on to what's happening in the Mid-Atlantic region on ocean acidification research. So we have this nice interactive map, lots of institutions get to be represented, and you can dig more through kind of what that research looks like. And then finally, or I guess second to finally, we've got a what is being done. So we went through, we have federal, state, and local action that's represented in this sort of menu of options. More soon, we might make some changes to this as we go, but right now we haven't heard anything from NOAA's acidification program that we need to, so we're going to keep it as it is for now. But you will be able to show some of that federal work through FORAM, through the NOAA acidification program, regional work, and even state government work. All the states in the Mid-Atlantic are represented on this map. And then importantly, we have our call to action. So we've never done this before through the Alliance. How do we get a general public audience member at an aquarium to think about what they can do on acidification? And again, this is a very carbon forward message, but it's not totally exclusive. It's using your voice, thinking about policy makers, needing to hear from our constituencies about climate ocean change, waving goodbye to carbon and how you choose different choices that you have power over as a consumer, diving into an ocean-friendly routine and championing those who are doing the work. Again, this is pretty carbon-centric, but you could imagine some of these being changed for your context and some of the colleagues that you work with across different agencies or in different contexts. And again, our desired uses, we are now starting to work this year with more aquaria under the banner of the Aquarium Conservation Partnership. The low lift thing, of course, is that we want some digital content on their newsletters and their social media linking to these maps. We're trying to create flyers and banners, interpretation, FAQs for interpreters at aquariums to be able to reference these in their location. And then the best case scenario is incorporating some of this content into actual long-standing displays on climate change or ocean change in the region. So those are all things that we're working now with a couple key aquaria partners to get done this year. Just as a little pilot, we'll start small and see where we go. But the hope is that you will be able to, I know I'm at 10 minutes, that you will be able to use these maps. I'll just mention we had a Mid-Atlantic acidification workshop last year here in Baltimore, and we were able to engage with National Aquarium. We talked about communications, we talked about these story maps, and so really trying to make sure that we're getting them out into the community and that you feel comfortable using them and incorporating them in a way that fits for you. So feel free, we'll probably put them in resources for the conference, and really happy to be able to share that out with you all.
So, Stephen Jessie, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I live on a barrier island over in Margate on this island island's called Acidification Island. You may know Atlantic City. We're just south of Atlantic City by about 3 miles. And I'm also worked in the construction field. I was an electrician, and I have very familiar with the products that we're talking about construction. On the barrier islands, they were going through an enormous amount of construction going on, and they're using modern materials that we may or may not be used to using. So what I want to talk about is the construction sites and the materials that's being used. Now, a lot of the materials, some of the newer materials are the PVC composite materials, things like Trex, AZAC, PVC pipes, silicone dust generated from pavers, fiberglass, and polystyrene, or better known as styrofoam. So let's talk about the polymers, which is PVC, the composite lumber such as AZAC, which seems to be a very, very dangerous product that it creates instant microparticles when it's being used. So the material resembles wood. It is cut and shaped and drilled as wood, but it is not wood. The material does not create sawdust that is biodegradable, that it goes down into the ground, but creates these microplastics that are here for us forever. And without capturing devices, these materials are going to end up in our environment, into the ground, through the storm drains, and ultimately into the ocean. So here's an example of a table saw where you can see the microplastics that are flying out of this, that is generated, that's flying out of the exhaust of this saw, of the table saw. And this is the photograph that got me started on this. I asked this gentleman if he could stop and put some sort of containment on his saw, and he told me I didn't know what I was talking about. I saw a need for education. Some of these products, as I said, are cut and shaped, and this is planing, and you can see that this material is going onto the ground. It is going into his tool belt. It is going onto his clothes. When he goes home, he's going to wash his clothes. His clothes are going to go into the laundry, and the laundry is going to go straight down into the waterways and ultimately into our ocean. So we call this stuff carpenter snow because it resembles snow. This is a little sample of it here. It's very fine, and it is instant. So the residue, as we know, this photograph here I took, this site was left here on a Friday afternoon. This was taken on a Sunday. That night, a nor'easter storm hit, so you know that all this material ended up washing into the bay. And so how do they clean it up? With a leaf blower? No, not a good idea. So we know that everything ends up into the storm drains. So it's into the gutter here, where it goes into the storm drains, which I took this photograph to show our city about the, basically for the grass clippings that's going into the ocean that's causing nitrogen and algae blooms. But it goes down into the storm drains, through the outfall pipes, and you can see it coming out of the outfall pipe here, and ultimately floating in the bay, which I took while I was kayaking out there. And who gets to eat it? And who eats the fish? So we looked for some research. I have never found anything anywhere that has shown that these microplastics created by this construction products are being used on charts or any kind of articles anywhere. But it's not just the microplastics, it's other things like the silicone dust being cut by the pavers. Fiberglass, these men are protected, but the people and the residents, dogs, people walking by, dogs, pets, they have a chance to inhale this. This stuff is going into people's yards, into their gardens, and into their house, and sometimes, again, washed into the clothes. And polystyrene siding insulation is also a problem. So what can be done? So I took these photographs, and I talked to our green team about it. And one of our members was very enthusiastic, and she actually wrote up an an ordinance. And the ordinance is very basic. It is said that we have to contain these products. So we want to see vacuums on saws, we want to see tarps down on the ground, we want to see this material cut in enclosed places, we want to see these hoods that the manufacturers make, and we need to get it down. So once we started doing this, we got a lot of press, and a lot of other towns started to get on board with us. So we got our ordinance passed, and then we got all these other towns to start passing ordinances as well. And we hope that the state will start taking over this. This is really a global issue. This is not just local, this is global. So we send out the messages to the contractors. Well, I told you that. So, but the manufacturers, they make these tools that can go over the, that can be used to contain this stuff. They have the saw hoodie. They have vacuums that could be attached to a circular saw. And this is the one that we're seeing mostly in our town now. This machine works great. The material goes right into the saw and into this. It goes into a vacuum, which sucks it right up, and there's virtually little dust. So we formed a coalition group. And with it, being a Surfrider member, I did take this to the Surfrider chapter. And I have to say that our district manager has really went to town on this. She had started to create a website. We have flyers that we distribute, and we have formed these other groups like Beyond Plastics, Clean Ocean Action, who helped to draw up the ordinance, and Save Barnegat Bay. So this is a barcode that will take you to the website. We have these flyers made, and we'll distribute them outside. And on the back of this is a website that if you can use. And we also made up these flyers in Spanish and in English. So when our building permits go out to the contractors, they get this flyer that goes along with it. So it's all about taking care of our environment. As I said, we could imagine breathing this stuff. We bring it into our bodies. It's going into the ground. So, and what I like to tell people about when we go to the different towns, it is up to us. A lot of the administrations don't know. Council members, commissioners, they are not necessarily aware of this, and not a lot of people were not aware of what this construction contaminant is doing to us. So, thank you.
That's inspiring. Now we're going to hear from Tim Cole about the North Atlantic right whale and what's up with the right whale.
So I'm Tim Cole. I'm at the NOAA Fisheries, Northeast Fisheries Science Center up in Woods Hole, Massachusetts. I've been involved in whale surveys for about 30 years, and at the Northeast Fisheries Science Center, doing right whale surveys for the last 25 or so years. I'm going to talk about our right whale aerial surveys along the East Coast, including the Mid-Atlantic. This photograph is actually taken off of Cape Cod, but that's what a right whale looks like from 1,000 feet. Our typical survey altitude. They're typically not in close to shore like that, but they're up in Cape Cod Bay right now, and that's a pretty typical occurrence in April as they make their way further north. So some basic information about right whales. They range along the east coast of the US and in Canada. We have several critical habitat areas in the United States. Down in the southeast are the calving grounds off of the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida. And then the Gulf of Maine has been designated as a critical habitat for feeding. The golden rings in that center map there also show high use areas that occur in the feeding grounds pretty much year round. It's only a portion of the population that travels down to the southeast region for primarily mothers to give birth to calves. Right whales are highly mobile. They're swimming along at 2 to 3 knots, 24 hours a day, so they can cover quite a bit of territory. And in the fall and in the spring, when they're moving between the calving grounds and the feeding grounds, individuals might pass through the mid-Atlantic several times going north and south. Right whales have a unique ecology. They're ram filter feeders feeding on copepods, which is a small amphipod that can form very dense high caloric value patches of prey. And that's primarily what drives the right whale's distribution in the feeding grounds. The seasonal transition is basically north to south, so Jay's waft. But the annual distributions have changed over time given climate changes and oceanographic shifts. And I'll just point out that we have a blog that follows a particular individual named Fenway from where we saw her up in Canadian waters down to the calving grounds where she gave birth to a calf last year. We use photo identification to track individuals and the population as a whole for right whales using the natural markings on the animals. Primarily the white bumps on the heads. These are called callosities, and you can see in this slide that they're unique between the different individuals shown on this image. The photographs of the individuals can be taken from plane, boat, occasionally they're taken from shore, and they all feed into a central catalog of individuals that are matched by curators at the New England Aquarium. And we use the population or these photo identifications to track the number of individuals each year in the population. We have a very precise population estimate going back to 1990. That top graph shows the right whale's population over time, with the total population in the black dots at the top. And you can see that we've had a pretty dramatic decline in the population since about 2011. We had a high of about 480 individuals in 2011, and now we're down to about 370. Most importantly, though, are the proven females. The number of females that have actually given birth to a calf, we're down to only about 70 of those. So pretty critically low number of the reproductive potential of this population. The reason for that big decline is because deaths have outstripped the birth rate for the population. That lower graph with the red and black dots. The red dots are the births each year, which are fairly highly variable. And the number of estimated deaths, which are the black dots that have these credible interval bars on those, went into a big increase in the last 10 years. So quite a shift from the previous decade where we had relatively high numbers of calves being born and sort of a steady state of mortalities that equates to about 10 whales a year. But then in the last decade, we've seen a steep decline in the number of births and a big increase in the number of mortalities. The deaths of right whales are almost exclusively due to either entanglement or vessel strike. There's some mortality from the calves, natural, birth complications in the calves, but not very many. And over the last, from about 2012 to 2022, we estimate about 216 whales died. So a significant part of the population. So in terms of the aerial surveys, which is one of the primary means we have for tracking the population, both for collecting photographs, and it's really the only way we have of charting the distribution or the density of the whales along the east coast of both the US and Canada. Pictured here is the NOAA Twin Otter that our team uses, but we work with a number of other partners, both state and nonprofit groups, in getting coverage of this wide area that the right whales use. Our flight time's usually about 5 hours, and we have systematic lines to cover the area. And when we sight right whales from these systematic track lines, we break from the track to circle the whales to get an accurate count of the number, and also to photograph each individual for the population monitoring. So this is a map from Whale Map, which is a data portal we have, and I've listed the website down there along with a password that basically allows you, lifts any data display limits. So that's sort of the magic decoder ring for folks who are interested in exploring this packet or this platform. And it's very interactive. It's not just right whales that are displayed on this, and it's not just aerial surveys that are displayed. There's acoustic detections and sightings for different species. The brown lines that you see are the actual GPS files from the survey plane. So these are the executed track lines. And then the dots are color-coded by the Julian day of the year. So the dark blues are January, and the yellows are December, and then the greens are sort of the summer months. So this is showing what we've had over the last, between 2018 and 2022. This is all of our effort, all of our sightings from all of the various aerial survey platforms. All the lines to the right of that dark dashed line are lines conducted by the DFO, the Canadian Fisheries and Oceans. But you can notice here that we have we've had a big coverage gap in our surveys in the Mid-Atlantic prior to 2023. So towards the end of 2022, we started working with a lot of our partners, including the states, to try to figure out a comprehensive plan to provide effective coverage, efficient coverage, and to bolster our safety and coordination between the different survey groups, including both state and nonprofit teams. And this is our last years of realized survey lines. So again, it's the same color chart, and these are all the surveys that have been conducted by the different aerial teams. And you can see we filled in the gap in the Mid-Atlantic with a company called Azura that has been providing aerial surveys in the winter months. We did just a month in 2023, 2 months in 2024, and then this most recent winter, they surveyed from December through March. And again, you can explore that on Whale Map. So to bring this back to Marco, and I want to call attention to the Ocean Data Portal, where some of the results of all of this aerial survey effort is available to everybody. These are density surface estimates of right whale densities along the east coast of the U.S. that have been generated by Jason Roberts at the Duke Marine Spatial Lab. And he has taken all of these surveys data, all of the survey data, and basically accounted for different effects of sea state and different biases that can affect the detectability of right whales during the aerial surveys, and has basically come up and been able to use environmental covariates to predict likely abundance in other areas where we did not have comprehensive coverage, like the Mid-Atlantic. And allows us to basically shows all of the our best estimate of right whale density, and he's plotted this by month. And so I encourage people to check out that resource on the Ocean Data Portal. And when I was doing my research about Marco and trying to tailor my presentation to fit into the agenda here, I discovered that they have also generated this density difference between two eras of right whale distribution. The one prior to 2010, and then following when we had a fair bit of oceanographic change following 2010. And they've mapped out the differences in the estimated density of right whales between those two eras. And you can see that the mid-Atlantic here has increased. The red and orange depiction shows that level of increase in the estimated density of right whales in the mid-Atlantic, while we've seen a big cooling or lessening of right whale abundance in the north, in the Gulf of Maine, and down in the southeast U.S. So we didn't have as much effort prior to 2010 in the mid-Atlantic, very little in fact. So there's the estimates here for that prior era are going to be a little, we have less certainty, but we're fairly confident that this represents a real change in the abundance of right whales in the mid-Atlantic. And most recently, we've had, I forgot to point out in a prior slide, but we've had some big changes in right whale occurrence in the mid-Atlantic, specifically south of New York and off New Jersey in the summer months. We had an aggregation of whales there throughout the summer, which was a big change. And that sort of underlines the need for continuing monitoring. So just as some acknowledgments to our partners, both the different research groups we work with and the different states we've been working with. And my email address is there, and I'm happy to answer any questions if folks want to reach out to me. This whale is a whale named Tux. He's an adult male. He's one of the green dots of all the whales that were in the large aggregation south of Long Island this past summer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's really amazing to see how much we've learned and how much, yeah. Kudos to you, Tim, and company for that work. It used to seem like the whales magically teleported from Georgia to the Gulf of Maine, and now we know they actually do swim through the mid-Atlantic. We have two more talks. I was a derelict in my introduction duties. I did not introduce Alan Lee, who is a fishing captain, a charter boat captain with the FV Mushin, and he's going to speak last. But now we're going to hear from Jana, and take it away, Jana.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jana Foster, and I am the Engagement Manager for MARACOOS. Today I'll be presenting on real-time forecasting for endangered Atlantic sturgeon in the Delaware River Estuary. So Atlantic sturgeon live in rivers and coastal waters spanning the east coast from Canada to Florida. They are born in freshwater and migrate to the ocean as juveniles. They return to freshwater each spring to spawn as adults. The Delaware Bay and its surrounding estuaries serve as vital nursery grounds where the young sturgeon grow and develop before heading out to the ocean. Atlantic sturgeon can live up to 60 years. They can grow up to 14 feet long and can weigh as much as 800 pounds. And they look like dinosaurs. They are slow growing and late maturing. And the presence of them is a great indicator of water quality because they need fresh, clean water enriched with oxygen to successfully spawn. Their presence is an indicator to researchers of a clean and balanced ecosystem. The Delaware River once supported the largest sturgeon fishery on the East Coast, with the amount of landings peaking in 1888. But their population quickly declined and collapsed in the late 1890s. And this collapse was partially due to overfishing to meet the demand for sturgeon roe, also known as caviar. Despite capture prohibitions, improved water quality, and habitat in the coastal waters, populations are still struggling to recover today. Sturgeons are fundamental to a healthy ecosystem. They help clean freshwater rivers and lakes by eating decaying organisms and invasive species. Without them, it can imbalance an entire ecosystem and make invasive species a more significant issue. Atlantic sturgeon have been considered endangered or threatened species since 2012. Their slow growth and late maturity leave them vulnerable to human threats, including bycatch and commercial fishing. Sturgeon often become unintentionally caught in gill nets, leading to injury or death. Since they are so large, they often will destroy nets when accidentally caught. Therefore, fishermen are motivated to avoid sturgeon bycatch due to the negative financial impact. Habitat deconstruction, dredging, water removal, and poor water quality negatively impact sturgeon spawning grounds and juvenile habitats. Habitat destruction is particularly an issue in the Mid-Atlantic region because local gillnet fishermen target species including striped bass and monkfish whose habitats overlie with sturgeon habitats. Sturgeons are also frequently struck by ships, particularly in the high-traffic waters of Delaware and Hudson rivers. As conservation efforts work to rebuild these populations, understanding when and where sturgeon are likely to be present in the Delaware Bay is crucial for commercial fisheries and marine resource managers. Having an accurate understanding of their presence will help protect sturgeon while reducing regulatory burdens on fishing and coastal construction. To help support this need, the Atlantic Sturgeon Risk of Encounter product, based on the Atlantic Sturgeon Occurrency Model and developed through collaboration among MARACOOS, NOAA, and NASA, provides timely, science-based insights to guide resource managers and fishermen to reduce human impacts on this vulnerable species. So to start, they developed the Atlantic Sturgeon Occurrency Model. They took 300 individual sturgeons and they were implanted with long-duration acoustic transmitters. They were detected at over 100 receiver stations in Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, New Jersey between 2009 and 2013. The data revealed that 4 environmental factors played a role in whether sturgeon were present or absent at any given time. The Atlantic Sturgeon Risk of Encounter product predicts the presence of Atlantic sturgeon in Delaware Bay and surrounding waters using satellite-derived environmental data, including sea surface temperature, ocean color, water depth, and time of year. So after making the model and then making this product, they've now actually made it so it's very easy for fishermen to use and resource managers with a 3 simple color system. Green meaning that there is a low risk of encounter, yellow meaning that there's a medium risk of encounter, and red indicating that there is a high risk of encounter, allowing fishermen to avoid areas where they might have a high risk or days where they might have high risks. The model's daily predictions are currently available online and showcase these areas and their risks. This application gives the user the encounter risk in zoomable maps for the current day as well as 3 days into the future, and the user can also select previous dates to see past predictions and warnings. I don't know why it was doing this goofy thing. Hold on 1 second, there we go. So, and then this is actually, it's shown on Oceans Map, which is the MARACOOS data portal. So not only is this application available there, it is also available on Oceans Map, and Oceans Map provides free and open access to crucial data products to support decision-making in the MARACOOS region, which spans from Cape Cod, Massachusetts to Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. MARACOOS is a proud supporter of the work being done to create this model and data product, and we are one of the 11 certified U.S. IUCE regional associations. MARACOOS is dedicated to delivering high-quality ocean and, my watch is telling me that my heart rate's high. I apologize. Appears I might be nervous. MARACOOS is dedicated to delivering high-quality ocean and coastal data to stakeholders, partners, and to the public. We would like to also thank all the other funding that was made for this project from NASA, the University of Delaware, Aquatic Sciences, Lemfest Ocean Program, Delaware Division of Fish and Wildlife, and NOAA Fisheries. And then also listed all the wonderful researchers that did this project. And I learned about this project to make this presentation. I just thought it was truly amazing how they took this model and turned it into something just so usable and really engaged with the fishery community to make it so that it is used and very helpful to protect these species. And that's all I've got. Thank you so much, y'all.
Okay, we'll transition to our last but not least talk here. While Avalon's organizing, getting the backup slides that we had for Tim since he was remote out of the way, I just want to call attention to some other themes that come out of this panel, and that we've got representatives here from different sectors, if you will, NGOs, folks who are, just involved in local issues and resource users, in industry, kind of, and industry definitely with Alan, and academia. So, and that's what it's going to take to get to where we all want to get together. Take it away, Alan.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Jane. Thanks for the opportunity to share some time with you this afternoon. I'm Alan Lee. I own and operate a fishing charter boat out of Manasquan, New Jersey. I also have the honor of chairing the proposed Hudson Canyon Sanctuary Advisory Council. I do want to make clear that I'm here with you today as an individual. I'm not here representing NOAA, the agency, or specifically the Sanctuary Advisory Council, or the SAC. First, I do want to thank Avalon and the entire MARCO crew for making time for the sanctuary here and at your other meetings, because one of the themes that I think I'll talk about with you today is the importance of the sanctuary process being a very public-facing model, and having the opportunity to be here with experts in the field has been a really important part. Talk a little bit, very briefly, about sort of the context that I come to this, since the title of this presentation is sort of a council member, meaning me, and my perspective on this process of designating the Hudson Canyon. My background is in professional sport fishing. Being full disclosure and being very vulnerable saying this, I am not a marine scientist. I do not have a degree in marine biology or any of the marine sciences, but I've been fishing the Hudson Canyon and surrounding areas for almost 5 decades. In fact, when I was appointed to the Sanctuary Advisory Council in 2023, I thought about it as my 47th year fishing the Hudson Canyon area. So hopefully, I'll integrate some of that as we talk about it. Hopefully everyone has some awareness of the Hudson Canyon area. But if not, here's some slides I actually borrowed from Wildlife Conservation Society, WCS, and specifically the New York Aquarium, who's been great partners in this designation process. On this map, you'll see in the upper left corner parts of New Jersey and New York, and then to the bottom right in the sort of oblong red circle is the Hudson Canyon area. The canyon itself, just some quick fun facts. If you were to start from New York City, it's about 100 statute miles to the southeast. And I say statute miles because those would be the kind of miles that you drive in your car on the road, as opposed to a nautical mile. Nautical miles, it's about 82, 88 nautical miles from New York City to the northeast tip of the Hudson Canyon. So we're talking about a place that's pretty far away from land. If this is indeed designated as one of the sanctuaries, it'll be one of the most distant sanctuaries in the national sanctuary system. It'd be one of the most distant sanctuaries from land. But the canyon itself, the Hudson Canyon, is a huge area. It is essentially the largest underwater submarine canyon in the Northeast. It easily spans well over, if we look at some of the hard wall, the steep walls of the Hudson Canyon, it's easily over 20 nautical miles of territory. Its depths, depending on what part of the canyon you survey, easily over 1,000 fathoms. And we might remember in our nautical training, a 1 fathom is 6 feet, so 1,000 fathoms is over 6,000 feet. And it's an extremely rich, ecologically and otherwise, very rich area, an area of very dynamic climate change. We see the edge of the Gulf Stream move into this area annually. And as the edge of the Gulf Stream moves in every year, it brings with it very nutrient-rich blue water that holds all kinds of pelagics, as well as other species. And this is just a sampling that some of the species that we do see out there, taking off of what the other panelist, Tim, talked about with North American right whales. Here's a picture of one one of many that were in the Hudson Canyon area last year. In fact, and I'm sure Tim could tell us better, but at one point there were over, I believe it's about 140 North American right whale sightings, which, if you remember the numbers that Tim presented, that's a huge proportion of North American right whales in that area. Some of the other biodiversity that we see in the New York seascape, the New York-New Jersey bight, as well as extending out into the Hudson Canyon. As you can see, a number of pelagics, mammals, whales, dolphin, et cetera, et cetera. It's a really rich area. So talk a little bit more about the actual Hudson Canyon, or the proposed Hudson Canyon sanctuary designation. It originally started back in 2016, and a complete transparency here, it was well before I got involved at all. Folks at New York Aquarium were instrumental in making that nomination. It sadly sat on, after it was initially accepted, it sort of sat on a shelf for several years, and through a government administration, and then more recently in 2022, it sort of became more active, and the proposal moved forth to designate it as a part of the NOAA National Marine Sanctuary System. Quick map showing some of the existing and proposed sanctuaries through NOAA. When I originally heard of the, and this is Alan speaking as Alan, not as chair of the SAC, the Sanctuary Advisory Council. When I first heard about the sanctuary, frankly, as a professional fisherman for over 4 decades, my initial reaction, and again, complete transparency and candor, my initial reaction was one of reluctance, because in my mind, maybe my simple mind, the term sanctuary suggested to me that it was going to be an area that was protected, possibly, and I'm saying possibly here because we'll see how things come full circle here. I originally thought of the proposed sanctuary as an area that would be off limits from fishing, off limits from fishing. That's what I thought. And as I spoke with a lot of my professional fishing colleagues, that was also sort of the scuttlebutt, to use that term. That was the talk on the docks. So it was sort of ironic, maybe in some ways, that I was approached by folks in the industry to maybe take a seat on this SAC, the Sanctuary Advisory Council, because I thought it was going to be something that could be to the detriment of what I had done for decades. However, I learned what the sanctuary status would mean, and it was actually quite the contrary. In fact, one of my initial conversations I had with NOAA staff was, whose idea was this to name it a sanctuary? Because I think it really does not resonate well with a lot of professional fishermen, boat captains who would be consumers of this area. But we see here just some pillars as to what the sanctuary status might mean. To protect this for responsible use into the future, protection from oil and gas and mineral exploration, to help enhance tourism and the strength of the economy. This area is an area that is frequented by commercial fishermen, as well as recreational for-hire, as well as non-for-hire boats. Infusing literally millions of dollars into the New York, New Jersey economy. And when I say millions, I'm talking about hundreds of millions of dollars between the boating industry, the fuel industry, the marine industry, fishing equipment. It's a huge industry. And also very important is the opportunity for the sanctuary to become essentially a repository for marine research and education, for STEM work. And this is something that has been a stronghold of what the SAC is really trying to do. A quick listing of some of the goals that NOAA has put forth in terms of this proposed designation. And again, it echoes some of the same ideas that I talked about so far. So there was a scoping process, a sanctuary proposal. There was a designation of essentially 41 people onto the Sanctuary Advisory Council. Of these 41, there were 15 voting members, 15 non-voting alternate members, as well as 11 government agencies that were part of the SAC. And this is a multidisciplinary group that includes a lot of heterogeneity in terms of its membership and the constituents of these different SAC members. And by building this from the ground up, one of the hopes, and I do believe it's been successful, is it integrates through a collaborative process the various stakeholders that have a vested interest in it. And we've been hoping and looking forward to the release of documents from NOAA, hopefully in the next few months. And this would be then subject to public review and then hopefully move forth to its designation. Just a quick sampling of some of the voting and non-voting seats. In the interest of time, I just want to maybe highlight one of the really exciting projects that's coming up that has been approved and funded for this upcoming summer. That's the NOAA Hudson Canyon Research Cruise on board the research vessel, the Pisces. It's slated to be a 2-week-long research cruise that will sail out of Newport and spend it's anticipated to spend two contiguous weeks in the Hudson Canyon research, doing a variety of research. Through the sanctuary, we've already formed a research and science work group, an education and outreach work group. I would really encourage folks that are here to check out the NOAA Hudson Canyon Sanctuary website for additional information on that, because the information and the opportunities there certainly exceed the amount of time that I have here with you today. But it's been a real exciting process. We appreciate the support here at MARCO, and we look forward to and invite everyone here to be a part of our public comment during our meetings and to be part of this process, because ultimately this sanctuary is a collaborative process, and it's one of inclusion. It's something that we want you to be a part of also, okay? Thanks so much for letting me be a part of this. Thank you.
Wow, that was such a great and inspiring group of talks. I think we might not have time for questions. Is that where we're at?
Well, I think let's take a handful. We can maybe convene the closing panel starting at 4 p.m. or so. Give people a little time to stretch their legs. But let's take a couple of questions from the audience, because that was such a fantastic panel. Christy.
Thank you. Hi, this is Christy from Delaware DenRec. My question is for Tim. I have lots of questions actually, but since you all are here, I'm gonna save my questions for you for later. So Tim, I am wondering, does the survey data that you collected in the Mid-Atlantic where there was coverage gaps, does that inform those like seasonal management areas? And I may not be using the correct term, but those the slowdown areas?
No, not at this point. The new ship strike rule did not was retracted by NOAA, so there will be no changes to the seasonal management areas for the slow zones. There will continue to be dynamic management areas, which are voluntary. When we identify 3 or more right whales, in an area, that's sort of the trigger for setting up a DMA, dynamic management area, where we just request mariners to either go around or transit through that area at 10 knots or less. So we had quite a few of those around Hudson Canyon last summer when that large aggregation of whales was there. And Alan, it was 152 unique right whales that were identified in that area. So about 40% of the population.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I knew it was a very high number. It's really neat to see. Thanks for your work.
Yeah, it was a big change. Yeah, thank you.
Other questions? I have a quick question for Tim. Oh, do you have a question? Oh, go ahead. Hold on. Go ahead. Just speak into your.
I just have a quick question about the microplastic disposal. Is landfill the preferred option? So we're collecting things so it's not going into our waterways, but is there a hierarchy of preferred options for disposal?
Well, at this point, yeah, it's to contain the particles like you would do something like with lead or asbestos or shingles or things like that, to contain it so it doesn't go flying off the trucks and goes into the landfill.
Landfill.
Yeah.
I have a question for Tim. It seemed to me like when you showed the map of all of the different right whale surveys that are happening up and down the coast, it's really an excellent example of a coordinated effort to ensure spatial and temporal gaps are being filled. I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about that process of getting all the different players on board. Was that easy, challenging? Could you just talk a little bit about that?
No, it wasn't that difficult. I think, you know, it's been great actually that we've had a lot more state involvement, and we'd love to get more Mid-Atlantic states involved in this. Yeah, getting the funding together was the biggest challenge. And the Mid-Atlantic surveys that we executed this past winter, that we expanded, you know, that's on contract funds that we have to wait to see if we can, you know, continue that or not. But a lot of the survey effort that has gone on over the years has been done by different nonprofit groups like the New England Aquarium or the Center for Coastal Studies, usually in part through state funds, but also through NOAA grants to states. So hopefully those will continue. In terms of, you know, the coordination, a lot of us know each other. We've been in this work for a long time. So it's mostly a phone call or an email to each other just to make sure we're coordinated each time. And, you know, we're all kind of on the same page and understand that's a big task. So we welcome any help we can get.
Thank you.
Question in the back there?
Hi, this is Joe with Marco. I have a question for Jessie. Do you keep any metrics or record metrics on things like how many people are seeing the story maps in aquariums? And I guess what kind of impact they have, and like, are these displays adaptive based on what seems to have the best effect or lasting change on the viewers?
It's a great question. Our only metrics right now are just like website visits, not actual practical, you know, ways that these are going to be implemented into Aquaria, and then sort of how that does track with some behavior change that we can monitor. But we are thinking about those metrics as we work with a couple Aquaria this year, sort of like a pilot phase. But I'd welcome, if you're interested in that kind of conversation, welcome your engagement in it as we have it with Aquarium Conservation Partnership. The other thing I would say is it will be interesting to see, you know, I think at first I was sort of imagining we have three options, you know, choose which way you'd like to display this content. And I think we're going to take an approach that's a little bit more tailored to each aquarium that wants to work with us. So it will be very interesting to see sort of how they choose to represent this topic, sort of how it best fits their policy goals, how it best fits their probably constitution in different ways. So that'll be an interesting way to think about what behavior change they're looking for and how this supports that.
That's great. I'm going to just use my moderator's prerogative because there's been a couple people have asked me about portals, and you know, the portals are the way that we are one of the key and most important, best ways that we push out information about the ocean to people who might want or need that ocean. And of course, Marco has the Mid-Atlantic Ocean Data Portal, and MARACOOS has Oceans Map, two wonderful different products. I just wanted to one way to think about how they're how they fit together in this ecosystem is we, on the Ocean Data Portal, use little to no real-time data. It's generally average data about where things tend to be or where things can be forecasted or expected to be, whereas MARACOOS is real-time data, like the sturgeon forecasting example. And it's been lovely to get increasingly better at how we work with the two sites together and get improving interoperability is still a goal, but we're making some nice progress there. Thank you.
Was there another question? Oh, there we go.
This is a question for Stephen. Could you speak a little bit about how contractors have reacted to those new ordinances, you know, what their experience has been and how you've been kind of working with that feedback and perhaps promoting or adjusting or anything of that nature?
Well, speaking for my town, a lot of the contractors are in favor of this ordinance. We got feedback from the building department because they did a straw survey, and they are okay with it. Of course, there's going to be a few that are going to complain and be grumbled about things, but a lot of us are fishermen, and we know what's going into the ocean. So what we did was we kind of like shined a light on something that was so obvious that nobody really paid attention to before. So they're okay with it.
Alan, along those lines, actually, I was wondering, could you talk a little bit about how your fishing colleagues have responded to your participation on the SAC, and has any of their perspectives changed in the same way that you talked about, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, thank you. You know, I think a lot in the fishing community, the word sanctuary oftentimes does not resonate well. And I hear this up and down the coast. And one of my roles as in the SAC has been to try to connect with the public. So a lot of it has been public education to sort of re-educate people that sanctuary does not mean fishermen keep out. It actually means fishermen, we're keeping this for you and your future generations. I joke, but I guess I'm not joking. I'm sort of on the second half of my life. I'm on the downward side of my life, you know, raised 4 kids and now 7 grandkids. You know, I'd love to see this place, the Hudson Canyon, available for future generations. And I see a lot of younger folks out in the audience today, and maybe, you know, early career researchers and folks. I hope that you will keep this torch burning in terms of, you know, protecting our environment. But I think to answer your question more directly, Avalon, is I think there's been a lot of favorable response with the public education. For example, we've spent a lot of times with different fishing clubs, and it's not just the fishing sector of the SAC that's going out doing this. We have the education, tourism folks, research folks. They're all getting out to educate their sector of the public. And through this collective effort, and it really has been a very collective effort, there's been a lot of people behind this project. It's really, I think, come a long way. And with the proposals that we as a SAC have sent up to NOAA, the agency, it's been one that reflects our stakeholders. And I think in that regard, it's what people want to have happen. We're not selling something that is unpopular. We're selling something that people are telling us they want. And it's been very rewarding, and we hope to see this continue. Thank you.
We can go ahead and wrap up this session.
All right. Well, I know you all have more questions. Please find these folks and ask them after during the remaining times. And thanks a lot for your attention, and it was a pleasure to be able to host this.